Volkanovski backs out of match against Islam Makhachev. The UFC media has been long awaiting this one-of-a-kind match between Islam Makhachev and Alexander Volkanovski. But according to recent footage from the Joe Rogan podcast, it seems like Volkanovski has no choice but to respectfully back out of this match. Situations like this happen all the time, and it sucks for everyone, the fans, the fighters, and the business. But sometimes there's nothing you can really do about it. Islam Makhachev and Alexander Volkanovski were in the middle of a training camp for their biggest match. These guys were planning on competing for the pound-for-pound title belt, and the whole UFC media was shook. Obviously, we all still look forward to this match happening one day, but unfortunately, we won't be seeing it as soon as we thought. Thankfully, Alexander Volkanovski's injury isn't as dramatic as it seems, but it's definitely enough to make him back out of his match against Islam Makhachev. It's very rare that we ever hear bad news from Alexander Volkanovski, but this is one of those moments. Alexander Volkanovski was recently seen on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. He explains the details of his injury and his plans for the future in the UFC. Joe Rogan and Alexander Volkanovski have actually sat together on the podcast once before, so they most definitely have a friendship formed. Joe Rogan and Volk get into some pretty interesting topics, but one of the most interesting parts of the podcast to me is Volkanovski's thoughts on Islam Makhachev. Obviously, Alexander Volkanovski is a very respectful man, but I must say, it feels like he crossed the line, especially with him not being able to get into the octagon and defend the... Alexander Volkanovski is a very respectful man, but I must say, I feel like he crossed the line, especially with him not being able to get into the octagon and defend himself. All I know is this podcast was definitely an interesting one, and it will have you shocked. There's obviously a lot to get into today, so be sure to stick around and watch this video until the very end, as we get into things one detail at a time. Trust me when I say you won't want to miss a thing. Thanks for stopping by today and visiting us at Warrior Report. We post daily UFC updates and news that you really should know about if you're a fan. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more videos like this, leave a like, and comment keyword Volk to enter a chance at winning our brand new iPhone giveaway. One lucky viewer is picked at the end of each month. Now, let's jump into this video and take a closer look at Volkanovski backs out of match against Islam Makhachev. Alexander Volkanovski has never had to back out of his match during his UFC career, and a lot of people think it's odd that he's backing out of this one. First of all, everyone knows Islam Makhachev is a very tough competitor, especially after watching his performance against Charles the Bronx Oliveira. But we must remember, Alexander Volkanovski is the pound-for-pound champ, one of the toughest and most well-rounded guys the UFC has ever seen. Volkanovski obviously wouldn't back out of a huge match for a small reason, but after announcing his recent injury on the Joe Rogan podcast, it seems like the media hasn't been having it. Most people are hating on Alexander Volkanovski, but the man is actually injured. You cannot just fake an injury in the UFC. The medical teams are great workers and they make sure everything is legit. So why is Alexander Volkanovski receiving all this hate recently? Well, it's safe to say that many people from all over the world were looking forward to him stepping foot in the octagon with Islam Makhachev, and Islam Makhachev has been on the other side of the world preparing for this big moment. So for it all to be thrown away is ridiculous, but there's really nothing anybody can do about an injury like Volkanovski's. Only time will be able to heal it. Which makes me wonder, what will happen to Islam Makhachev? Is he still going to be competing at UFC 284? And if so, who's it going to be against? It's obvious that Islam Makhachev and his coach Khabib Nurmagomedov had plans of getting the pound-for-pound belt, and I don't think they're settling for any less than that. Which makes me wonder if Islam is going to be a part of UFC 284. So far, there's been no word on who Islam Makhachev would possibly be going up against, and I think it's because Khabib and Islam want out of the match. So far, there's been no word on who Islam Makhachev would possibly be going up against. And I think it's because Khabib and Islam want out of the match if it isn't for the title belt. Islam Makhachev worked way too hard to get this far and is on a hunt for title belts and nothing less. I respect it, and personally, I think he deserves it. Well, it'll only be a matter of time before we find out exactly how everything plays out between Alexander Volkanovski and Islam Makhachev. UFC 284 should still be interesting, and I'm hoping Dana White is able to put something very special together very fast. He honestly never fails to impress, so I must say I'm interested to find out what Dana's plans are. There's going to be much more news about Volkanovski vs. Islam, so be sure to subscribe to our channel for more content like this.